What up, everyone? This is Bevan, and welcome to the Seila Fire podcast, which is a talkback podcast for the novel The Seila Fire Emergence, now available on roguematter.com. We go in depth behind the scenes with Seila Fire creator James Mascia. Did I say that right? Hey,
Mascia.
James Mascia. We just met, even though we've not actually known each other for 3 years?
I don't know.
No, but remember, we know each other from New York Comic Con.
Mm-hmm.
I always,
That is
guys, yeah, we have history. I wander around pounding the pavement doing press, and James and our good old buddy Michael Dolce is selling comics and stuff. And I just kind of come on by and sit down and take a breather. And here we are, finally not even talking about comics. We're talking about a novel.
Yeah, because I'm just that awesome.
You're just that awesome. And actually, new installments of the novel and episodes of the podcast are available same day every month. So, guys, make sure to join the movement and go rogue at roguematter.com. So, James, now that I have you all to myself, I have questions.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Maryland.
Yep.
What's in Maryland?
It's where I work.
I know, but I've never been. So, if I were to go to Maryland, what would I do in Maryland?
Well, there is Annapolis, which is quite a nice city to go and tour around. They have the military academy up there, and it's the state capital and everything. There is Baltimore, and, going to see the Orioles is always a lot of fun.
Okay.
And, a lot cheaper than if you were to go, it's a lot cheaper to go and see the Yankees there than it is at Yankee Stadium.
That's a good tip for those that want to take a train ride.
Oh, well, a lot of people do usually. There are usually Yankee fans at the Orioles games when they're playing the Yankees than Orioles fans.
Wow, interesting. See, I'm more of a football person, so I don't really know a lot of this baseball stuff.
Well, the Ravens are right across the parking lot then.
There you go. The Ravens, was that the movie Blindside, I think, was about about the Ravens eventually, correct?
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it.
This is not your forte, unlike comics, which is your forte. But again, we're talking a novel today, which is great. I actually thought I was going to be reading a comic from you, and then I started reading, and I was texting Michael, being like, "There's no pictures. What's happening? Is there no artwork for this yet?" He's like, "No, it's just a novel." It's like, "Oh, okay, I got this. This is cool."
Mm-hmm. I do occasionally like to just use words.
Well, you're an English teacher, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Does that mean you don't have to use Grammarly?
Usually, no, I don't. It also helps that my wife is an editor too, so.
No way. Really?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really don't need Grammarly then.
Nope.
It saves my life. Grammarly does, because I'm terrible with punctuation and grammar. I had plenty of friends in high school that were English connoisseurs and English wizards, and they would look at my written word and be like, what is this? And I'd be like, I don't know. These are great ideas though, right? They're like, yeah, but your punctuation and your adjectives, what is happening?
I feel the same way with some of my students sometimes.
Well, thank God you don't have to deal with my writing. But let's dive into your book, because there's actually a prequel series called Exile. And the hot take I want to ask you is, would you want readers to read Exile before going into Emergence?
Honestly, doesn't matter, because although it is a prequel, they are two completely separate stories.
Mm-hmm.
So you can read Exile and be perfectly satisfied with it, and not
know what happens.
Not know what happens, exactly. Thank you. But you can also, just get started on Emergence and not need to read Exile at all, because they're even set in two completely different time periods as well.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating, because I read them both back to back, well, the first chapter, because today, guys, we're going to only talk about the first installment of Emergence. But what I found interesting about Exile is I was in this futuristic Blade Runner / Mad Max / the world is basically falling apart, Interstellar style world where this character Athena finds out, well, there's also classism going on there. And
Yes.
Athena finds out that she's even got like a Holocaust kind of number thing going on. And she's, lottery numbers of people that she thinks are being put to death. In fact, and guys, I'm just going to spoil everything here. So if you don't want to hear any of this and you want to go read it and then come back after this. But she basically finds out that that's not what's happening, kind of. It's like what her lover, who was one of the head scientists, and she was also an engineer on it herself, they're sending people to different dimensions via, is a wormhole the proper term for what they're doing?
Yeah, that would be the best the best description of it that I can think of.
Okay. But they're sending them to other places because basically the planet, which is Earth, is basically it's not going to be inhabitable anymore. So they have to send people somewhere else, but they haven't mastered exactly where or how yet. So she gets and what's kind of shady is that she thinks because she's pregnant with the head doctor's child, she's going to be spared. And because she was also working on the project. And to be clear, I haven't even brought up that this came about because there was a war between humans and aliens, which is very fascinating to me.
That is correct.
See, look, I'm studious. I can read things that are not comics. And she finds out that she was kind of selected to do this on purpose because I guess he needed to get her out of the way. It's kind of like not clear, but they kind of want her to protect the child. And if she makes it somewhere, she's gonna have to procreate. Your mission is to have more sex and more babies.
Pretty much, yes.
If you survive.
Yes.
Which is wild. And that, and that's, and it's also kind of in a sense, kind of relevant for what's going on in our society right now, because you're dealing with climate change, you're dealing with exhausting of resources, and you're dealing with, hey, women, we need you to procreate. Can you procreate more? And I was actually going to ask you, how did you come by the survival kit items? Because it was what? Matches, change your clothing.
Yeah, it was just very simple things that they could send through. Very low tech, very simple, just basic items that one might need to survive, and nothing more. It's what they could send through with them.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I was also thinking, well, maybe they should give them backpacks or something for first aid kit, medicine, maybe some bars for food. But then again, they don't even know if they're living or not. Oh.
It's they have very limited resources to begin with, so.
Correct. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Did you draw any sort of inspiration for this kind of environment and world for just the prequel series?
No, the whole idea of the prequel series was essentially, what if we had a piece of technology that we did not understand and we used it anyway?
Okay.
And that is essentially where the whole story begins with. Okay, and that's where, I had written the Exile story. I had written a while back, a couple of years actually before I wrote the Emergence story.
Okay.
And as I was writing the Emergence story, it fit, if that makes sense. So it wasn't going to tie in at all, and then it like something clicked. It didn't make sense until I brought that piece back into it, if that makes sense.
It does. You cut out a little bit, so if you could rephrase that answer really quickly so I can hear it, that'd be wonderful.
Oh, great. So as I was saying, when I started writing Emergence, I did not intend for it to connect to Exile.
Okay.
But the story didn't quite make sense until I made that connection.
Gotcha. And so let's go into the first installment, or chapter 1 of Emergence, for a second, because I was really interested, as somebody that used to really enjoy history, especially history kind of during World War II and then kind of after. I was really fascinated by your choice of where to set the story, and I'm just wondering if we can kind of unpack for a second what the significance of the year 1952, 1953 is, and why it's so important to place your story during this time period of American history.
Okay, so, well, to answer your question, it's set in the 50s because that's when we had essentially the UFO crisis.
Okay.
Where everybody was seeing UFOs and everything. And a couple of months before this story is supposed to take place, there was the whole big, the UFO invasion of Washington, D.C. Okay. And there's a whole big thing. Like over the summer, there were these 2 nights where these unexplained, aircraft, were detected on radar. No one ever, identified them. They scrambled the fighters and everything, but they never were able to catch sight of these UFOs, officially.
On paper.
Yes, it is set during that period because of the UFO scare, and because of there was the thing that came out of this called Project Blue Book, which I kind of allude to in the story as well, where they go to investigate the UFOs, which is where the whole story begins, with looking for what they believe are UFOs. What turns out to be.
And it's fascinating.
Yes.
It's fascinating because the conflict also at the time was the Russian scare. You're getting Russian spies, and you were getting, they were infiltrating the United States. And there was always this, a lot of the tendencies then was all this unexplained stuff is, it must be the Russians. It must be the Russians.
Yep. And I included that in there as well. Mostly because I've always wanted to write a spy novel, but I never have. I just included those elements into this story because, again, one, it made sense perfectly to do it, and because on top of the UFOs having that whole Cold War, tension as well, because at the very beginning of the book, they think that it is the Russians that have that whole dynamic in there. Storytelling.
Yeah, and I think it's also so just to kind of catch everyone up on what's going on. When we open up, it's in the 50s, and there's a bunch of UFO sightings. And from what I gathered from just the first chapter, there's kind of 3 main characters right now, correct?
Yeah, it's a very much an ensemble cast,
which I love.
Yes, we have the Russian spy, we have the American spy, and we have the Air Force captain. Those are the 3 that are in the beginning. We're going to meet some others in the future chapters as well that are going to be big players and very important. But those are the 3 that are going to carry throughout the story.
And it's interesting when we also open up, there's a bunch of Canon Noises happening in a port town in North Carolina. Was there any significance in placing that in North Carolina? Did something actually happen there that you kind of borrowed?
There are a couple of things. Okay, well, the whole idea, it's Southport, North Carolina. Okay, which is an actual town. It's actually the place where they film a lot of those. What's his name? Jonathan Sparks. Movies,
novels, romance novels.
Yeah, all of those romance novels. They actually filmed a bunch of them in this town.
Wow.
So, it's actually, if you've seen any of those movies, you've probably seen this town before. But it's a town that is very much in the it's a very small town feel and everything, especially when you get down there by the water and everything. And a lot of the houses that are there are, still, from, early 1900s, late 1800s. I mean, like they're very old houses. It's a very old town. But now this thing with the Canon Noises is actually a real phenomena.
Wow, that's so cool.
Called Seneca gun.
Oh no, come back. It got to the good part. Come back.
And they
nope, he's gone. There we go.
But this area, Southport, and the surrounding area experience them quite often. But nobody knows what they are. They've been looking into it for a long time. Nobody knows or where they come from or how they form. So I used them and used the story to explain them.
I love how narrative can come from actual truth, and you're just in a sense trying to explain, hey, this is an actual phenomenon. Maybe it helps their tourism by, kind of trying to find an answer to it too. So it kind of opens up that the poor sheriffs of like little towns, they just don't know how to handle anything when like cannons go off and people are panicking, and you've got like neighbors, small town neighbors that like the best you do is kind of take care of them. In fact, not to bring this to Sonic, but Sonic kind of covers something like that in like the first film, where it's like you got the bored sheriff and police people that are like dealing with minute things every day, and then something does happen and they have no idea how to handle any of it.
No. The sheriff would be the fourth character right now, actually.
Poor sheriff. Sheriff Howard doing his best. Thinking Russians are in a small ass town, and you're like, why would Russians be in your small town, dude? I don't know why they would be there. It's not like you got any. Well, they do have military, I think they said in the novel.
Yes, there is a military base right across the river. It's right on the Cape Fear River. This town, so right across a military base that they actually. It's actually where they not stockpile. It's where they ship out all the munitions to like everywhere. So it's like a munitions place.
Gotcha. So here's where I kind of go back to my question that I'm kind of teetering on half and halfing with, which is if you've read the prequel series at this point, when this kind of opens up the book, I already kind of get an idea of what's going to happen now. So I'm like, oh, I don't, it's an interesting thought. I would be curious to see people that have not read the prequel series, how they took in this information versus me who read your prequel series. It's like, oh, it's almost like two different mysteries are kind of now happening. Like now I have different questions because I've read the prequel and I've read this chapter versus somebody that would just read this chapter.
Yeah, if you were just reading this chapter without reading the prequel series, you were probably like, what the hell is going on?
Correct.
And that's okay, because that's, the whole thing about it is that you're going to be seeing it from these people from the 1950s, their point of view, and they have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on. So,
correct.
So that is, that's part of the fun of the story.
And I wanted to also ask like a writing question too, because it's always, I find it tricky for writers to kind of balance out that you've got to leave just enough breadcrumbs to keep people interested, but you also have to do some exposition. How do you balance that out?
Oh, I wish I could answer that question.
It's a good one, right?
I'm gonna be honest. Like, the way I write the stories is the way I'd like to read the stories.
Oh, that's a good answer, though.
Like, I don't even think about. You just asked, how much exposition to put in versus how much story in and all that. I don't even think about it. I just do it.
Well, I mean, because you always have to kind of have like this hook. And right now, even though I've read the prequel series, there is a very interesting hook question I have versus people that have not seen the prequel series. Like, I'm wondering, like, for a hot second, okay, so just to kind of recap a little bit more, what ends up happening is the American agent and the Russian agent end up in the same town, which is this port town, because they've both been sent there to investigate military stuff. That's military secrets. And the Canon phenomenon happens again while they are there. And the sheriff sees something splash in the water. So he and the undercover American agent go out to the lake, and they find out that their bodies being plopped in there. And then again, if you've read the prequel series, you're like, oh, this is very kind of Interstellar-like, where they're kind of being sent back in time. Well, not Interstellar didn't really quite do that, but like it's almost like you've probably read Superman Red Sun, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how at the very end, it's been a while since I've read the comic, but it does in a sense like they send him back to the past at one point towards the very, very end, correct? I think.
I believe so.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, it's like they're sending these people back accidentally. Like, I'm sure the scientists didn't think that they were doing that.
No, again, it goes back to that whole idea of we're using technology that we don't understand.
Yeah. So it's like for me, it's like, oh, now I'm guessing that our character from the prequel series might actually have survived, which I don't know because I haven't read the next installments, and you're not going to spoil it for me. But that's the question I got from the chapter, is like, oh, is she surviving? And I actually thought for a second when the American agent jumps into his name is Robert, I believe, correct? Yes. He jumps in to kind of retrieve the body, and it's a female body. I thought for a split second it was going to be her, but then he said, nope, she's dead. Her neck is snapped. I was like, well, never mind. But it also leads to that question of, could anybody survive these falls? Then if they're all plopping into these waters, well, I mean, if this is one port, I wonder if there's another place that they are landing, these lottery winners, if you are landing to where they actually could survive this wormhole.
They are.
Dang it! Wait, no, say that again. You froze.
I said they are landing in other places as well.
I got one answer. Woo!
There's a lot more to the story than what you have seen so far. And there's even a lot more to the story than what is going to be in the novel as well. So,
ooh, are you saying you're doing spin-off series? Is this gonna also eventually become a comic book?
Who knows?
Who knows? Stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned. But we're kind of left on this cliffhanger of like them all, well, because you also have a UFO specialist that's in the government that feels like he's not, and that's Evan Rollins, correct?
Yes.
And he's like, so you also get introduced to him because he wants to take this seriously, that there might be actual alien extraterrestrial life. And every specialist under the sun in the government's like, no, we got to make this about the Russians. It has to be a plane. It has to be a weather balloon. It's the Russians. That's what it is.
He's 100% convinced that it is some alien phenomena.
Correct. So it's the cliffhanger of this is that he is now going to head to the town. So everyone's just kind of heading to this town now.
This little town that nobody has ever heard of.
Besides the Spark novels, where everything takes place in this little town. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. I would say that this was a really good setup of the world and the characters. And the one thing you always want from a good chapter is you want to be able to pick up the next chapter and keep going. Mm-hmm. And so I tip my invisible hat to you, sir, that I was like, wait, this is it? This is all I have right now? Mm-hmm. I need to talk more. But yeah, I mean, do you have a personal favorite character that you've written so far that I've been introduced to?
Oh, I definitely like Katrina, or Katerina rather.
Katerina?
Yes. Katerina, yes. The Russian spy.
The Russian spy that snapped a man's neck while she was having sex with him, which was epic. Mm-hmm. Which was pretty epic of her. And I do appreciate how she's trying to study the different types of dialect. And I do appreciate that she's trying to also find an American drink that is okay enough to drink, even though she's kind of insulting that our liquor selections suck.
Well, of course it does. Come on.
I've never been to Russia, so I don't know.
It's not vodka.
It's not vodka.
It's not vodka.
Vodka. Oh gosh.
However you say.
However you say. No, I was actually impressed that you put Russian dialogue in there with the subtitles. So I was hats off to you on that one as well. And he takes his bow. Mm-hmm. Well, James, I really don't want to say much else because I want people to go read this. But before we go and talk next time when we get our next chapter, where can the folks at home find you?
I guess at drenproductions.com, or you can search up Dren Productions on any of the social medias.
Excellent. I love that. Well, until next time, when I finally get my second chapter, we'll probably have a lot more questions and with a few more answers. This has been the Seila Fire Emergence podcast episode, a talkback podcast for the Seila Fire Emergence. New installments of the novel and episodes of the podcast are available monthly. Check out roguematter.com or download the Rogue Matter app, because we have an app and we're cool, on iOS and Android to read the Seila Fire Emergence. Chapter 2 will be available June 15th. Seila Fire podcast episode 2 will be available the same day.